Just 20 minutes outside of Cincinnati, Ohio, in Mason stands an amusement park that has been a staple of Southwest Ohio since 1972. An amusement park featuring 364 acres full of 14 thrilling coasters, delicious food, fun family rides, and special holiday events. This place is known as Kings Island, the subject for today's inaugural episode of the Coaster Broadcast Podcast. Hello and welcome to the Coaster Broadcast Podcast, the podcast that not only gets you excited for your next trip, but gives you nostalgic memory of what makes these parks great for travelers and thrill seekers alike. My name is Sedric Granger, and I'll be your anchor for today. Today's show centers all around Kings Island. Although it may not get the same notoriety as Cedar Point, Kings Island is one of the best parks around, a true staple of not only the Ohio park scene, but also the national scene as well. So let's take a look at what makes Kings Island so special, and what better way than to go right to the streets of the park. There are clearly many sights and sounds that really give you so much joy whenever you're at Kings Island, whether it's the roller coasters rolling over the track or the nice music that's played throughout the park, or even the certain themed lands that have more thematic music to the area. Where you could probably also think about the families that are walking by as well too, and the joy, the smiles, the reactions. There's just so many great sounds to being at Kings Island. And it really is a special park in so many ways. It's special to me because it represented an area that wasn't taken away during COVID. During COVID-19, I was a high school senior going into my freshman year of college, and having the pandemic happen, I didn't get to have my graduation in person. I had to do mine on YouTube instead, and there just wasn't a lot of fun things to do. A lot of times, high school students, after they graduate, they celebrate by going on a trip or something like that. But unfortunately, that opportunity just wasn't there due to how serious the pandemic got. As a result, one of the places that was open, though, was Kings Island, and me and my friends, we decided to go there as many times as possible. I went to Kings Island 7 times within 2 months of each other. I mean, it was something where we just really stuck to it, and I think it's something that's really become a staple, like I said in the intro, of the entire Southwest Ohio community. Even my girlfriend, she lives 10 minutes away from it, and that's a place that she grew up going to as a kid. And a lot of people in Columbus, if you played in the band or in the choir or in the orchestra, they oftentimes would have competitions at these amusement parks. So it really just became a staple of the way that people grew up in. Now I think it's time for our next segment. Let's jump into the high five, breaking down the top 5 roller coasters at Kings Island.
Here's Orion at night right here, 287 feet tall, 300-foot drop, and one of the most beautiful light schemes you'll ever see on a roller coaster, made by B&M 2020, my ultimate graduation gift. Even though COVID took away so much, it was not able to take away the coaster known as Orion.
We start off our overview with the tallest and fastest and longest steel roller coaster at the park, and as the time of this recording, it is the newest roller coaster at Kings Island. It's Orion. You got to hear my introduction of the ride. I called it the Ode to Orion. I took that video back in 2020, and you got to hear the audio of it right before I started off with this breakdown of the roller coaster. But it's a B&M Giga roller coaster. Giga coaster is a coaster that's in between 300 feet and 399 feet, whether that's the height of the coaster or the drop of the coaster. As long as one of them is in that range, then it can be classified as a Giga roller coaster. And I see this roller coaster as a graduation gift. That's something that I mentioned during the Sound on Tape. And the reason for that is because it was new in 2020 when I graduated. I talked about what made Kings Island special to me was all those visits I got to have in 2020, as every weekend I was pretty much at Kings Island. And I got so many rides on Orion. And the great thing about it is just how much care was put into that ride. Not only is it a very thrilling attraction, but there's a nice little space theme that is to it. It also revitalized the whole area of the park, and it's something that really stands out along the skyline with its 287-foot tall lift hill and 300-foot tall drop. It's one of those rides where a lot of people work up the courage to get on that roller coaster. I think about a time when me and my friends went, and one of my friends hasn't ridden roller coasters in a long time, and he didn't want to just full send and do that ride first. He wanted to kind of work his way up, and we did all the smaller rides and worked our way progressively into bigger and bigger attractions. And we ended up working our way to the Orion, and he just felt so awesome after accomplishing the big one. And I think there's going to be a lot of people that are going to grow up and really enjoy that, even from talking with like 8 or 9-year-olds that have gotten the opportunity to ride Orion. Whether you're just sitting on the train and you're on the brake run waiting to get back to the station, you have a lot of kids excited about it. You also have parents that are kind of freaking out about it, but you always have to have that really tall roller coaster that really makes you work up that courage and let go of your fears. And most importantly, I think about a time where my sister, she overcame her roller coaster fears, and it all came down to doing the Orion roller coaster at night. And she was no longer afraid. She let go of the fear and was able to fly free. And that's a really special memory to me, and that's why this roller coaster is so fantastic and is firmly in the high 5.
I've ridden this roller coaster 9 times, so this will be my 10th ride on Diamondback.
Currently, it's your favorite coaster of all time.
It is currently my favorite coaster of all time. Yes, it is. 230 feet with a 215-foot drop and 24 seconds of air time. We're about to take on Diamondback. Gabe, what's your thoughts?
Oh, it's gonna be a hell of a lot of fun, man.
There you go. Derek, what's your thoughts, buddy?
Oh, yeah.
Heck yeah, man. Diamondback's one of my favorite coasters.
Excited!
Oh, you guys excited? That's right.
The next one of our high 5 roller coasters, these are in no particular order. It's not a top 5 and which one's the best, which one's the worst, because everyone could have a different opinion and could have ones that are their favorites while another might be someone else's favorite. But we jump into Diamondback, as you got to hear from the opening audio. Diamondback is a roller coaster that opened in 2009, and it really represented the start of a new era of investments for Kings Island. They were under new ownership as they switched from Paramount to Cedar Fair, and it's kind of funny we're talking about ownership now that Cedar Fair and Six Flags, as of last month, have merged together. So there is a little bit of a new ownership group that's there to Kings Island, which could change the trajectory in the future. But it really set a great tone for Kings Island of what the new focus of the park was going to be. Paramount, they had a lot of IPs, so it was mainly about those themed attractions. Diamondback really set the tone for, hey, we're going to make sure we add really high thrilling rides, and we're going to try to sell the point that we are a very thrilling park where you can be able to get the balance of an extreme thrill ride like a hyper coaster that takes you to the height of 230 feet, but also we can bring you great experiences in respect to like kid coasters. There's going to be family coasters, things for everybody to enjoy. And I think that the addition of Diamondback really gave them a big ride to their skyline that kind of put the park even more on the map and encouraged people to, if you're in Ohio, not just go down or go up, I should say, to Cedar Point, but also go down to Kings Island because you want to hit Diamondback as a roller coaster. This one spent a lot of time as my personal favorite roller coaster too, as it just has so much floater airtime. And if you don't know, airtime is the feeling you get that you're out of your seat. So that tends to happen a lot on hills, and Diamondback all about those hills. A steel roller coaster with a lot of smooth hills. And then, of course, the signature moment of the ride, a nice splashdown. It's one of those very memorable attractions that you have to ride when you go to Kings Island.
Today it's the Beast. Yeah! You can see the little tracks for the Beast right now, right here as you're going towards it. Kind of funny. But yeah, it's kind of nice how they do this, I believe. I think this is leading to the Beast right here.
Favorite coaster in this place.
Yeah, this is Gabe's #1 in Kings Island. He loves the Beast. I love the Beast too. This one sealed my love of roller coasters right here. The Beast now, one of the most iconic coasters at Kings Island and the longest coaster in America. The Beast. It's this old, janky wooden coaster, one of the longest in the world. Yep, this one is a legend, a true legend of a roller coaster right here.
Now we roll from the newer age of roller coasters to the old school. Yes, we got the Beast. Opened in 1979 as the longest wooden roller coaster in the world, and to this very day, it is the longest wooden roller coaster in the world. This one is the ride that made me a coaster enthusiast, and there are many, many people that can say the same about the Beast roller coaster. This was one where coaster enthusiasts, which was a very rare term back in the 1970s, 1980s, they would flock to this ride and get an opportunity to go. This one was famous. It's like the world's largest backyard roller coaster, as it was not made by a specific corporation. It was all made in-house by Kings Island. They did a fantastic job on this wooden roller coaster. It features 2 lift hills, and it just feels like such a substantive experience. It's also pitch black back there, and that allows it to really give the best night ride possible. With some roller coasters, you have a lot of lights, and it's all about the light package. But with a classic wooden coaster that goes through the woods, if you have a night ride, it really feels like it's something special. There's a creepy fog that sometimes sets in the valley at the back of Kings Island, and it's just a great experience for that. But I'll take you back to when I was 8 years old, going to Kings Island for the first time, barely tall enough to ride most of these rides, couldn't even ride the 54-inch tall requirements, but Beast was a 48-inch tall requirement ride, and it just looks super janky around the edges, but it's just one of those rides where even though it's a little rough, it'll beat you up a little bit. Some of the retracking that they've done to take care of the ride and some of the rough around the edges aspect of the roller coaster really makes you remember the Beast. It's a ride that you cannot forget, and it was such a popular ride that it's still the #1 for so many people. And one last story about the Beast. My auntie's life partner, Kevin Mitchell, who played for the Cincinnati Reds for a while, he used to tell me stories about how him and his teammates for the baseball team, the Cincinnati Reds professional baseball team, not too far away from Kings Island, they would always go after practice to Kings Island just so they can get rides on the Beast. And I told him that, yeah, I love amusement parks and I love going to Kings Island. He's like, hey, is the Beast still there? And I was happy to say that the Beast definitely is still there, still rocking and rolling, even though it's been open since 1979.
Ride on the docket is the Banshee. This is the longest B&M inverted roller coaster, measuring at 168 feet tall. It has a 150-foot drop, including 7 inversions. That's what's next for us today.
Next roller coaster for High Five is Banshee. This is one that will put you upside down not once, not twice, not thrice, not 4 times, not 5 times, not 6, but 7. Yes, it's got all types of inversions, and that was a niche that Kings Island really needed, especially now that Vortex is not there anymore, which was the first looping roller coaster at Kings Island, or at least the one that had the longest reign at Kings Island. And now having Banshee as a modern day looping coaster is very nice. I really like to say that Banshee does a great job of referencing the past, as there was a roller coaster called the Son of Beast at Kings Island, and Banshee now lies on the same spot where Son of Beast was. And this is Kings Island starting to dive into theming a little bit. One thing that's really popular about the Disney parks is that they have really immersive themes. Banshee really started that trend of Kings Island trying to work that into their attractions. The story behind Banshee is that the Banshee came in to haunt the land that Son of Beast used to be on, and there's a lot of headstones, and it's like a whole cemetery sort of thing. And there's even a headstone that says Son of Beast, rest in peace, with a flame starting to stay on fire as a way to pay homage to the Son of Beast. So I think it's really great that there's a bit of lore that's being built with the different attractions that are at Kings Island. But this one's just a fun one, and I feel like it gets better as you get closer to Halloween. The last ride that we're going to give a little preview of in our High Five segment is Mystic Timbers. You know, wooden roller coasters are usually known for being older, usually built in the 90s. Well, this wooden roller coaster, this one was built in 2017. Earlier in the podcast, just a segment ago, we talked about how Banshee really started the idea of theming at Kings Island and immersing the riders in the theme of a roller coaster. And Mystic Timbers, they took that and ran with it. They have a full haunted theme, and the big question is, what's in the shed? there's so much mystery that's built as you're in the line. There's lots of different videos and different posters to really give you this idea of the story. And there's also onboard audio that really adds to the fun. But it's a great wooden roller coaster, very fast pace with a lot of airtime hills. You're out of your seat quite a bit, lots of tight curves. It's one of those ones that it is very small, but it's very wild at just over 100 feet. But man, that thing certainly packs a punch. And then you get to find out what's in the shed at the end. Here's a little hint. The sound on tape that I included does give a little hint to what might possibly be in the shed. But that'll wrap up our high five segment. There's many different roller coasters to explore, and if I had more time, we'd love to dive more into that. So stay tuned for some more in-depth discussion on Kings Island in future episodes. Now for our next segment, we got a special interview on today's broadcast. We got a special feature with theme park and roadside attraction journalist Don Helbig. Not only is he the co-host of the Tower Topics podcast, but also he is a member of the American Coaster Enthusiasts, also known as ACE. He has all types of experience with Kings Island, having attended the park since its opening year in 1972. He also worked for the park for multiple seasons during that span. In addition, he is right on theme with the Coaster Broadcast podcast as he spent some time in his career broadcasting in minor league hockey. So without further ado, let's jump into the interview with Don Helbig. Don, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us on the Coaster Broadcast podcast. First thing I want to ask you, just tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got involved with amusement park journalism.
Well, I'm a lifelong fan of the amusement theme park industry. When I was, a child, 4 or 5 years old, my earliest memories were going to Cincinnati's Coney Island, and that was the big thing that my family did every year. We came from modest means, so we weren't traveling to Florida vacations. Disney World was just starting around that time, but that wasn't where we were going. Coney Island was the big thing for us, so we would go there Memorial Day, 4th of July, Labor Day. We'd meet our cousins there, and in 1971, I started to see signs, and I'm real young at this time, 7, 8, 9 years old, but I started to see signs for Kings Island, and was intrigued by that, and went to the park in 1972 when it first opened, and just absolutely loved the atmosphere and was kind of hooked at that point. And then in 1981, I had a lot of time on my hand. I was a novelty vendor for Cincinnati Reds games. They had the baseball strike, so I started just spending my free time that I had unexpectedly at Kings Island. Started riding the racer a lot and ended up riding it over 1,000 times that summer. And then over the next 10 years, got over 10,000 rides on it. But during that time, I had an opportunity to get to know the public relations staff at Kings Island very well. Ruth Voss, Bill Mefford, Carolyn Bowes were the publicists for the park during those years. And that's where I kind of got interested in, possibly a career in public relations, the journalism piece of it. I thought if I could either work at a park or maybe, cover the industry, those kind of things. So that was in the back of my mind, but I also wanted to be a sports broadcaster. But it was the perfect way for me to really learn about it, kind of be the pawn, I guess, in the middle of, they were pitching stories about me doing the racer, so I kind of knew what the park wanted to do. And then I also knew what the needs of the media was when they were coming out. So getting the best of that, both worlds with that experience, really paid off dividends for me.
Yeah, and with that experience, I'm sure you've gotten to cover a lot of great stories. Of course, being there from the beginning, you got to see the racer be built, you got to see the Beast, and see Kings Island continue to grow. Is there any specific stories that really stand out to you in terms of the stuff that you've gotten to cover with the park?
Just really seeing it evolve. When it opened in 1972, was spectacular, but it was a lot of the Coney Island rides that come over. But then through the years, the Beast opening 1979, that was a huge deal. I mean, just worldwide coverage. That's the ride that really put Kings Island on the map. And then the Vortex came about in 1987. That was a record-breaking ride. So just getting to see those innovative, record-breaking rides that Kings Island was doing, what was really a lot of fun and interesting to be a part of all of that.
Yeah, and I see that you run multiple different forms of media for really providing coverage for Kings Island and also a bunch of other different parks. So I always see the Towers topics on Twitter. I see a lot of that in the feed, and I know that you have a podcast affiliated with that. How did you begin that podcast?
A friend of mine, Ryan Sir, and I, we always had an interest in, doing something to cover the industry. And then podcasting was an idea that we thought of about 2 or 3 years ago. We launched what's called the Attractions Group podcast. I was still working at Kings Island at the time in the marketing department, so it would have been a conflict to really do a podcast specifically for Kings Island. But then after leaving Kings Island last summer, we launched Tower Topics, and Ryan is a huge Kings Island fan. Has been a season pass holder for over 20 years. And then, of course, with my interest going back to the beginning of it and having the experience, the inside part of it of working there, I think it's a good combination of, Ryan bringing that perspective as a pass holder, me bringing that perspective of having been involved in working at the park. So it's been a good duo there, I guess, for the audience. It's a show that, we always want to make sure at the beginning that we let everybody know that it's a show by Kings Island fans. We're doing it for the Kings Island fans. We're not affiliated with the park. So it's been a lot of fun to get to do that. And, it's really to that point now where, there's so many of these different platforms. You mentioned I have the X, and I have, Facebook, Instagram. I have a blog that I launched about 5 or 6 months ago, Theme Parks by Don, do a lot of coverage of Kings Island, Cedar Point with that. So it's just really a lot of things that I learned over the years that over the last maybe year and a half with the podcast, the blog, social media. It's, you just become a journalist, just being able to cover the industry like you would if you worked for a newspaper.
Yeah, that is such a cool job. When you think about different jobs and different applications for a journalism degree or for just being a journalist in the field, to cover amusement parks, roller coasters, theme parks, and all the amazing trends that are going in there, especially because in a similar way to sports, a lot of us have a lot of ties and memories from our childhoods of going to these parks, going to these places. Just like when you get that first chance to go out to the ballpark with your family, you get that chance as well to go to the amusement park with your friends and your family, getting over the fear of maybe going on the biggest roller coaster that's there and letting go. I always think about how if I didn't have Kings Island during the 2020, during my senior year of graduation, when everything shut down, didn't get prom, no spring sports, no none of that. It felt like everything was canceled. But the one thing that was open was Kings Island, and that's something that me and my friends, we spent so much of our time going over there, especially since they had the Bring a Friends pass. So I love the way that you guys are capturing that love of amusement parks and continuing to spread some great news. But jumping into Kings Island even deeper, in what ways have you seen Kings Island change throughout your years of going from when you were a kid to where you are at now as an adult?
Well, there's different ownership changes through the years, starting out, TAP Broadcasting, which had owned Coney Island. So the first, several years that I went there was owned by TAP Broadcasting, and then you had Kings Island Entertainment Company, and then Paramount bought it, and now Cedar Fair owns it. There's going to be a merger with Six Flags, so just the ownership changes a little bit. But I've seen it evolve to where at the beginning it was more about being the first innovative, record-breaking attractions, and that's what Kings Island was known for maybe its first 20 years. And then it opened up a water park. The kids area became, award-winning. So it went from like families to thrill seekers, then back to the families, then the families with young children, and those kind of things. So it's really had something for everyone, and I've seen it almost come full circle when Cedar Fair bought it, to where the entertainment, the special events that TAF was known for kind of came back into vogue with it. They had the Robbie Knievel motorcycle jump in 2008. You had Nick Belinda doing a high wire walk. They've got an annual event called Grand Carnival. So those kind of things, kind of come full circle to what Kings Island was known for back in the early days.
Yeah, and in your opinion, with this new merger with Six Flags, what changes do you anticipate for the park?
I don't think there's going to be a lot for the guests initially that they're going to notice. It's going to be more on the back end, I think, technology-wise. Six Flags might be a little ahead of Cedar Fair with some things, so I think that'll be a good thing for the guests, technology-wise, what they can do. I think it gives an opportunity because the IPs, you got Peanuts, you got the DC characters, Looney Tunes, so having all of those to work with, I think it just adds a lot more possibilities for the guest. I think you could retheme an area like Action Zone at Kings Island to the DC characters if you wanted to. So it just really does a lot in that respect. But for the parks, too, what it does, it gives them a lot more leverage, buying power. When they're dealing with whether it's the ride manufacturers or even just buying hot dogs and hamburgers, things like that. So you're able to get a better cost on that, which, might save a little bit of money for the guests going to the park. It might not cost as much to buy a hot dog or a hamburger because you're getting a better deal buying those products because you go from 13 properties, to 40 plus.
Yeah, that certainly can make an impact. And I think that point on brand recognition is huge with, of course, the IPs that they have. That's something that Disney parks and Universal parks can always hang their hats on that, Cedar Fair parks haven't had as many of those aside from the Peanuts. Now with Six Flags, you got, of course, all the DC superheroes, which should be able to generate some momentum. Also, just the idea that Six Flags itself is something that I've noticed whenever I'm talking to people who might not be as much into amusement parks. When you say Six Flags, something snaps to mind. When you say Kings Island to somebody who's not from Cincinnati, it makes it a little bit tougher for people to connect with that. Or maybe when I say Carowinds to people around here in Ohio or any of the other parks that aren't necessarily local to Ohio. So I do find that interesting. Now, jumping into
that's a big thing. Yeah, that's a big thing, though, why the Six Flags name will be the name that the company is known by, just because it is, recognized worldwide. And as you mentioned, not everybody's going to know what Kings Island is, or they don't even know that it's owned by Cedar Fair. But when you say Six Flags, you're right. Everybody knows what it is.
Yeah, so I think that's going to be a huge impact as well. And then, of course, with this podcast, the name is the Coaster Broadcast Podcast. That's what I came up with because, of course, I'm a broadcaster, one of my good friends.
Yeah, I love that name.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate it. And it's cool hearing that you also had some interest in sports broadcasting. Did you do any of it growing up, by the way?
I did eventually get to do it. I wanted to be a play-by-play broadcaster, either in baseball or hockey. When I had the chance to start looking at those jobs, you get out of school and that, and you start to just figure out you're not going to start at the major league level. You're not going to be in the NHL or Major League Baseball right at the bat. So everything you had to, that I looked at the minor league level, you had to wear other hats. And a lot of those, you were going to do sales, sell outfield signage, program ads. I had no real interest in doing anything like that. But a way I could justify my existence as a broadcaster was to also do the PR. So that was one way to wear those multiple hats and find a way to get into the professional sports industry. So I did get to be a play-by-play broadcaster in professional hockey, worked in different leagues, the ECHL, the International Hockey League, and the American Hockey League. And that's where I did the bulk of the broadcasting, was with a couple of teams in the American Hockey League, one in Cincinnati and one in Albany, New York.
See, that's awesome. Was it the Cyclones by chance?
I was with the Cincinnati Cyclones. Didn't really get to do much with the broadcast there. Did get to help out with the weekly radio shows, those kind of things. But it was with the Carolina Monarchs and the Albany River Rats where the broadcasting thing really started to take shape. And I became the radio play-by-play guy for the Cincinnati Mighty Ducks. Did that for 3 or 4 years and then went to Albany, New York, and was doing it there. But also got to do arena football while I was in Albany.
See, props to you, Don, because I know of all the sports leagues, my friend and I, we talk about this all the time, of which one is probably the most challenging to broadcast. Radio hockey is a skill set that always impresses me whenever I'm listening to like the Blue Jackets on the radio or any other hockey broadcasters do their thing. So, again, credit to you.
Yeah, that was easy for me because I grew up watching the sport, playing the sport, so I was able to anticipate what was going to happen. I could read the play. As they were coming down the ice, what they would be looking to do. So I had that advantage over a lot of, people that get thrown into broadcasting hockey without really a background with the sports. That made it a little bit easier. But if you're just thrown into something, it's the most challenging sport to call hockey.
Yeah, I'd imagine. I see that with some of the sports that I've played. So I played volleyball and football. I can kind of anticipate volleyball a little bit more and why it was a really natural progression for me compared to some other sports where it took me a little bit to find my momentum, especially like in wrestling, sport that I recently started doing last year. I'm starting to get a little bit better with that, but it took more of a learning curve. Relatively. Same thing with hockey, where I watch Blue Jackets a little bit, but it's really the periodic. When they're good, I really am interested. When they're not, it kind of lays dormant as an interest.
Right, but that helps, with the podcast that I'm doing, was having that background, doing hockey play-by-play, doing some arena football. So I had the broadcast background, and then my partner with the podcast, Ryan Sir, he had more of the technical background, to be able to do those kind of things. So we needed both of us, what we brought to the table to get it launched.
See, that's a fantastic combination. And then also going back to your point about wearing different hats, that's something I feel like I've learned a lot as a senior. If I want to broadcast and continue doing that, which is my ultimate career goal, is to just make sure that I have other skill sets that can be used to help out a department. So for me, I've been aiming for college athletics, and I love being able to develop student talent, helping to train students in their broadcasting skills. And then in addition, I love being like a sports information director. I love creating boards, spot charts, all types of information that could help to highlight our athletes. So that's certainly an angle that I'll be leveraging. And it's cool to know that that was also your experience with play-by-play too.
Yeah, it was. And the more that I was able to do, the more valuable I became to those different organizations. Or when I went to Kings Island as the PR person, because I had that experience as a broadcaster, it helped doing either radio interviews, TV interviews, those kind of things. So, yeah, you want to get as much experience as you can.
Yeah, because I can see myself also wanting to work in the amusement park industry at some point, especially if I have that option, given my love of that industry. I was actually deciding when I was going through high school, I was either going to be a play-by-play broadcaster or go into roller coaster engineering. That was the two options. I didn't even think amusement park journalist as an option as well, but it feels like a great synthesis of both the options.
Yeah, well, now, it's a very tough industry to break into unless you want to do, maybe like start marketing with group sales. You can do that and work your way around, or you start seasonally, and then you end up, if you're in rides, food, games, whatever it might be, those opportunities might come about for you to become full-time. But, it really is a difficult industry to break into if you are in, the PR, any of the communications positions. Hard to do it. But if you start your own things, you're doing a podcast, you've got a blog, you've got a YouTube channel, you can be just as involved with the industry, and, you're doing your own thing. You control your narrative, your destiny on what you want to cover and where you want to go.
That's right. And I like that you cover that with friends and with people that you've connected with over the years, which is kind of the same way that I started with me and my friend Gabe, just because we were like, hey, it's COVID. We got nothing else we can do. Let's go drive to Pittsburgh to go to Kennywood. Let's go drive to Louisville to go to Kentucky Kingdom and those types of things. So it's just cool. Some really, really great lessons from you. I appreciate it, Don. I got one last thing for you. It's just about roller coasters in general. Talk to me about your favorite roller coaster at Kings Island and why.
Well, my favorite roller coaster would be the Racer, because it was the first roller coaster that I ever rode. I wanted to ride the Shooting Star at Cincinnati's Coney Island, but I just wasn't ready for that type of a thrill yet. So the first year Kings Island opened, rode the Racer the first time I visited, rode it 9 times that day. So it has a special meaning to me because of that reason. But if you ask, was it the best roller coaster I've been on? I'm always going to say the Beast is the best, just because it's so different than anything else out there. There was never anything like that before the Beast debuted. There hasn't been anything of that magnitude built since. So the Beast would be the best. The Racer would be the favorite.
See, I love that answer. First of all, with the Racer, that was also my first roller coaster I've ever ridden, was the Red Racer back in probably 2009. When I was a kid. So I was really nervous to get on it for that first time, and it was my first ride. And then I went on to ride the Vortex and then the Beast, which really sealed my love of being a roller coaster enthusiast. So, of course, hearing somebody who's a big fan of the Beast, that always makes me smile, as well as my friend Gabe. That's still his number one to this day at Kings Island, which is awesome to be able to see. And then one thing I love whenever I go to Kings Island, of course, I always love getting Skyline there. My girlfriend lives only about 10 minutes away from the park. So every time I visit her, we go to Kings Island, we'll get our Skyline together, and we'll sit down. And you can see the Racer right along the pathway. And then right behind it, you see Orion. So you see the oldest roller coaster and the newest roller coaster at Kings Island. I think about the time where maybe in the 1970s where the Racer was like, wow, this ride was so tall. And then now Orion is insanely tall and skying over it. But I'm thinking I'm going to be like, when I'm 60, I'm going to be going to these parks with my grandkids, and I'm going to be like, oh yeah, Orion back in my day used to be the thing. And now they're going to have like drone roller coasters, which that's what I'm anticipating is the next progression is going to be skying over like 800 feet or something. And I'll just be laughing to myself.
Yeah, it's always going to evolve. But for me, it's great that you've got all this new technology and they send you through all these inversions and all those kind of things, but give me the Racer and the Beast any day.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, they truly are classics for a reason, and they're never going to get old to me. All right, Don, I just want to say thank you so much. I appreciate your time and appreciate this interview, not only from a amusement park perspective, but just a lot of takeaways from a broadcast perspective as well, sir.
Yep, well, enjoyed talking with you.
Yep, thank you so much. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Look forward to continuing to follow your travels on Twitter.
All right, thank you.
From a coaster standpoint, it is clear that Kings Island presents a wide variety of options for both the biggest thrill seekers as well as people who are looking for a more family attraction that everybody from little Johnny at age 7 to Big Johnny at age 30 can ride. It's really great to be able to have that variety in the roller coasters and so much versatility too. Whether you like looping coasters or you like airtime roller coasters, Kings Island provides a lot of variety. Now we'll close the Coaster Broadcast podcast with this. I recently got to take a trip to Disney and learn from an Imagineer named Elizabeth, and she described to me 4 reasons why people go to amusement parks. 1 is to enjoy some good food. 2, to ride good rides. 3 is to shop and get merchandise. And 4, and most importantly, is to make memories. And I am a true believer that Kings Island really does every single one of these core things. Thank you once again for tuning in to the Coaster Broadcast Podcast. This is your anchor, Sedric Granger, signing off.